This is Hannibal here from the HannibalTV.com, and today is my special guest. We have a returning guest. We want to start the year off here on the Hannibal TV on a positive note. So we have a spiritual deliverance minister, aka an exorcist. You've seen him on A Haunting, many episodes. You've seen him on Ghost Nation, a couple episodes. I am Matt Magdalene. I haven't watched that yet. You'll have to tell me what that is. You're an author of many books. I'm discussed in one of them. You have a new one coming out. Bill Bean, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing great. Happy 2024, Devin, and for everybody out there as well. And may it be a great year for all of us.
Yes, I'm expecting this year to be a great year. And one book that you have coming out this year is My Life by Bill Bean. Now, for those of, I know we have a lot of fans on here that have seen some of your other podcasts with me. What's the difference between this book and some of your other books? You look like one of the Backstreet Boys in that picture, by the way.
Nah, well, I don't know what to say to that other than I I just try to take care of myself, try to stay in shape. But you see the gray coming in there, so it is what it is. But I'm thankful, I'm blessed, I'm fortunate. And the difference between this book and the others, and this is my 11th book. Um, I, in all of these books, I have to start out by talking about my life, and you've had me on your program many times, and I thank you for that. And you always have to start from the start. So, no different in this book, but there is different information pertaining to um, a plethora of experiences that I've had with UFOs and non human looking beings throughout my lifetime. Continues to this day. As a matter of fact, I started the new year this morning at 5:40 a.m. Uh, I heard a sound outside. I looked out my window out of my office, and sure enough, to my right in the eastern sky was this very strange blue object. It was flashing a blue light. Now it's weird, Devin, because it was raining here, still raining. So it was very low cloud ceiling. So that object had to be, at a very low altitude. And I saw it for about 4 minutes, and it's very interesting. I've had so many of these different sightings and experiences. Why? I have no idea. Why have I been chosen for God to work through me to help people, to free them from evil? I have no idea, but I do believe it's true. And it's the same thing with this. Why do I continue to have these sightings and experiences? I have no idea, but I can assure you what I'm saying to you and to your viewers here, it is absolutely the truth. And so I look out there, I'm watching this thing, and it's a blue light, but it is really weird in the sense that A, it was moving back and forth. So 1 second it was heading south, the next second it's reversed course and it's going north. And the light itself, the blue light, now it could have been due to the clouds, but it just looked electric, if that makes any sense. The light was almost like lightning, how it was just traveling out. Now, again, was that because of the cloud cover? I don't know, but it was absolutely bizarre. And I believe that these things go back and forth like that because they're traveling on a magnetic field. So everything, all life operates on frequency and vibration. And those objects are the same thing. They operate on frequency and vibration and the magnetic field of the earth. And there is, I guess, part of the propulsion system has something to do with the magnetic field of the earth and frequency and vibration as well. There are, and look, for those of you who say, how can this guy be a minister? He's talking about UFOs and these experiences. Wake up, do some studies. I spent over 4 years in serious biblical studies. And I mean, there's a difference between reading the Bible and studying the Bible. And when you do these studies, you pray always and then do the studies, and you'll be astonished to find, like I found, that there's over 70 scriptures in the Bible that mention UFOs. A cloud, pillar of a cloud, flying roll, flying scroll, on and on and on. The scriptures are there. Psalm 68:17 says the chariots of God are 20,000. Okay. So it's all there. The information is there. I've had many divine experiences pertaining to UFOs, and I've had some demonic experiences as well, where I felt like my life was in danger.
Do you think that they are fallen angels, or do you think that they're interdimensional beings, or time travelers, or that they're aliens from another planet, or are they a multiple of different things?
All the above. And so when Yahweh, our God, created this universe, he spoke it into existence. So this is why I say all life operates on frequency and vibration, because he spoke the world into existence by his voice, which is frequency and vibration. Furthermore, well, we see the scriptures, and there are many scriptures that describe Yahweh having these flying chariots. Why? I don't know. He's the creator of everything. It's beyond me. Psalm 145:3 says, "Great is the Lord, greatly to be praised. His greatness is unsearchable." So we may never know these things, or he could reveal it to us. That's all up to him. But anyway, I firmly believe, Devin, that he created these flying chariots. I do believe that some of the heavenly hosts, the angels, traverse in them. Why? I have no idea. But I also believe that when Satan, and this is something that a lot of people miss, everybody sees Satan, the devil, as the enemy, and he is the enemy to mankind. He's the adversary to mankind. However, in my opinion, he's the rebel son of Yahweh. So there's two sons. There is the devil, Hasatan, Lucifer, whatever you want to call him, because he was a beautiful creature that was adorned with jewels, and Yahweh created pipes inside of him. He was a musical creature. He was in charge of the praise and worship music in heaven. And I believe the rebellion started when the younger one was created, the Christos, the anointed one, the one that Yahweh would save through, the Melchizedek, high priest of God, Yahshua Jesus the Christ. When he was created, I believe that created the rebellion, that the older brother felt passed over. And so therefore, Yahweh reassigned him out of his role as choir director to adversary to mankind. So when mankind was going to be created, Yahweh created us with free will. We're free to make our choices. Therefore, there has to be a consequence for the choice, the free will. And that's where the devil comes in. He's the adversary to mankind. So he serves his role perfectly, and God doesn't destroy him because he serves that role as adversary to mankind. So I believe that when the devil and a third of the angels were cast out of heaven, they were cast out in those flying craft. So they came down here, they took human women, had unnatural sexual relations with them, producing a hybrid offspring of giants called the Nephilim. The Nephilim were wicked, and the Nephilim obviously were part angel, part human, and they were man-eaters. The earth and men of the earth could not sustain them by feeding them, so they became man-eaters. And they also had unnatural sex acts with the beast of the field, apes, bears, dogs, wolves, gorillas, whatever. And that is the offspring of the offspring, in my opinion. And this is all my opinion, Devin. I couldn't go into a court of law and prove any of these things, but I firmly believe what I'm telling you is true. So these Nephilim went into the fields and had unnatural sexual relations with the beast of the field. And that, in my opinion, is the Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Sabe creatures. They are the offspring of the offspring. And so they're every bit as much supernatural as they are flesh and blood being. And they are very real because I've had experiences with them as well. So my best advice to anybody who would, be listening right now and saying, this guy's crazy, these things he's saying, pray first, ask God if what I'm saying is true, and then ask him to lead you to the truth. Don't take my word for it. If you do the research, and more importantly, if you pray and ask for that guidance and direction, then you will find the truth. And like Jesus said, the truth will set you free. So we could go all night long about all these types of topics. And I've had just about every type of paranormal, supernatural experience that you can imagine. And I'm grateful for it. I've had some horrific experiences. And even for those experiences, I'm not overjoyed that I had the experience, but I know that it was necessary in order for me to be where I am now by the power of God working through me to free people from evil.
Have you ever had any of these spirits follow you home when you've gone to these houses to exorcise demonic entities from a certain person's house that you come to visit?
Never once, and I'll tell you why. And it's not of my own accord. It's by the power of God working through me and by his protection and my constant connection. Now, Devin, you know me well enough now. I speak the truth. I always try to speak the truth. I try to be a good man. I try to be good to everybody. I go out of my way to help others and will always do so because my relationship with God is real and authentic. And therefore, being committed to God, I'm committed to excellence. So, in being committed to excellence, I try to do the best that I can do and be the best that I can be every day. Am I perfect? Absolutely not. I'm not Joel Osteen. I'm not smiling at you saying that I have a perfect day every day. That's a lie, and he's a liar. I'm sorry to say it, but it's true. We all have bad days. We all have bad times. We all have bad seasons. But the difference is for the person that has faith as opposed to the person that doesn't. When the obstacles and the challenges come along, and they'll come along for all of us at one time or another, the difference is that when we have that level of faith, we have blessed assurance in knowing that God is with us and for us, and he will help us to meet the challenges and overcome them. So it is by the power. I can't brag anything on myself, but I can tell you that nothing like that has ever happened and nothing like that will ever happen because of God's favor and protection and empowerment on me as well. You know, I was such a victim, and I talk about it again in the new book. I always seem to mention it. I've written 11 books, and the story gets repeated in a lot of them to start the book. But you have to know where I've been in order to know where I'm at. And my life was horrible. I was victimized as a child, had a hellish life, was physically attacked by demonic forces between ages 5 and 12. My father, who was a very good man and a very gifted and blessed man, made horrific choices. And I firmly believe that when under the influence of alcohol, those demonic entities were able to literally control him. And it's not the devil made me do it, but the devil can absolutely have demons to come in and aid and abet when a person has made bad choices, or they may be under the influence of alcohol and or drugs. If you're under the influence of alcohol, that is the spirit of Al-Kul. That word comes from Egypt. That means flesh eating spirit. That's why you see on the liquor store signs beer, wine, and spirits. There are spirits in the liquor and the alcohol. Drugs, if a person is a drug abuser or user or whatever, that's a spirit of pharmakia. That means sorcery. And believe you me, there are demonic entities that are just waiting to be dispatched to a person when they are under the influence of something. So my father, again, I forgive him for the things that he did, but it was horrific because he had become a raging alcoholic who physically abused my mother on a regular basis between the years of 1973 and 1975. I can recall being 8 years old, having to run to a neighbor's house and get the police called on my father because he was killing my mother. I mean, these are horrific memories. So I suffered the trauma in that way. And then coupled with the spiritual trauma of these demonic entities that were living among us in that house in childhood, and it greatly contributed to the destruction of my family and nearly destroyed me as well. Neither of my parents lived to see the age of 50, Devin. My mother died at age 44 from a cerebral hemorrhage. That was after having a series of strokes. and ultimately having kidney failure. She was very ill the entire time that we lived in that house from 1970 to 1980. And my dad was shot to death at age 48. So neither of my parents lived to see the age of 50. I've lost most of my family as well. Most of the family members died under mysterious and tragic circumstances. And so through it all, I look back and like I mentioned a couple minutes ago about not being thrilled that I had those horrible experiences, but I understand that it was necessary in order for me to be where I'm at right now and helping people. So I could be the greatest scholar in the world, but if I'd never had the experience, then I can't come together with the person that is suffering. I can't, there's no way to reconcile that. You just can't. But having had the experiences, there's an instant bond and trust that is formed in most of these cases. Some other cases, not so much, to the point where it almost became physical altercations until the person finally realized that, hey, I'm there for them. I want to help them. And then all of a sudden, everything would change. And then we are, in a bond like that. So that's, God knows what he's doing. And I thank him and praise him for everything. Though I wish I could change some things that took place, especially when it comes to the suffering of my mother. I've been involved in probably the low thousands of cases in helping people all over the world, not just America, but 55 other countries and counting. And Devin, I can truly tell you that I have yet to see anyone in any of those cases that had the level of suffering that my own mother had for such a long period of time. After my dad left us in 1975, she came under regular physical attack from those demonic entities as well.
So obviously, I guess your parents were aware of the entities in your house. Was your dad accepting of them, or was he in denial that they existed?
He was in denial. He didn't want to talk about it with us, but he did confide in my mother's mother, my grandmother, Dora Harvey, that he was having those experiences. And I really believe that my dad was a very tough guy and, very strong guy. He was a man's man for sure. And I wasn't afraid of anyone or anything. He was a fighter. And, but my brother shared some, and my brother to this day suffers from PTSD from those things that took place, in that house in childhood. He's 2.5 years younger than I am. And he told me a story. I wasn't there. And I said, he doesn't like to talk about these things at all. But yet one day, a couple of years ago, he told me a story about when he was home. I was not there. It was my mother, and he and my mother, and my father comes in one night in a drunken stupor, comes in through the front door. And in front of this, so when you would enter in through that front door, there was a coat closet there. It had these wooden doors, and they were sliding doors. And so he comes in, and so he pauses for a minute at the door. Now, this is the account my brother shared with me, and he has no reason to lie. He doesn't like to talk about this stuff. And he said, all of a sudden, something picked my father up. Again, my father was a very tough guy. Nobody was going to do anything to him, but yet something picked him up and picked him up in the air and threw him through the doors there, the coat closet, the sliding doors. Now, my brother was sitting on the couch and he saw it. And I can believe it because there were times that my mother and other people were also picked up by invisible forces and thrown. My mother was picked up by an invisible force and thrown across her bedroom. And she landed into her makeup table. She was cut open. She was scratched. She was bruised. She always had terrible marks on her long after my dad had left. So it took a lot for him to share that story with me, and I certainly believe every word that he told me. So yes, they were having those experiences, and I do believe that in my father's case, he was a man that was used to being in control of every situation, And he suddenly found himself in a situation that he couldn't control and was now being victimized. And I do believe that led him to escape reality through alcoholism. And, my parents were married in 1956. My sister was born in 1957. There was another child born in 1963, a male child, who didn't live for very long. And I never could get the true account of what happened. I was born in 66, so I wasn't around when this male child was born. But what I do know is that he didn't live for long. And representatives of Johns Hopkins Hospital came out and retrieved that body for studies. What does that mean? I have no idea. I tried to contact Johns Hopkins, and they said they don't have any more records. They don't have the record of that, and they only keep records for so long, and so they couldn't tell me anything.
That's very unusual. There's a fan on here that wants to know, have you ever heard of gang stalking? He gets the V2K and it's evil. The technology's evil. I have no idea what this is.
I know what it is, Devin. It's called targeted individuals, and in a sense, I'm one of those as well because I've been under a form of surveillance since 1995. Black vans, helicopters. I've had the Men in Black experiences on 2 occasions. So I understand it perfectly, and they do. That's the other term, gang stalking, but it's a targeted individual. So for whatever reasons, and I have no idea why, God chose me to A, work through me to help people, but B, also, I guess it's necessary for me to have all these different kinds of experiences to have the understanding of it for some reason. And as I said a couple of minutes ago, part of that reason is so I can relate to people that are suffering. The other part, I have no idea. But there is, as crazy as, everything that I've said, most rational people say this guy's nuts. Well, you could say whatever you want to say, but I can assure you what I'm saying to you is absolutely the truth. But I have had those experiences to where I felt like the government or someone, in these copters and black vans and other things were monitoring me, and phones tapped, all kind of stuff. This is just absolutely so far beyond the average everyday norm that it's hard for people to digest, but it is true. And what happens is, when people talk about these things, and I'm probably one of the few that come out and talk about these types of things on a regular basis, I don't care because, if you're telling the truth is the truth. There's no substitute for it. So I'm telling the truth. So I don't care. People could say whatever they want to say. I'm just giving you my accounts of what has happened to me in my life. And so these things are very, very real. Why? How is it that why would I be monitored? Who is monitoring me? I have no idea. I did have someone come up to me one time and tell me, he said, I'll never talk to you again, but you're being monitored through Fort Meade. Now, Fort Meade is where NSA is here in Maryland. And of course, we know what NSA is, the National Security Agency, National Spy Agency. And they go all over the world spying on people and all this. Now, this is out of Fort Meade in Maryland, which is about probably 25 minutes from where I live currently. And so that's what the guy said. I never saw him again. It's just absolutely bizarre, Devin. We could be here all night. I could list experience after experience that I've had that you would just shake your head and you go, either this guy's loony, he's making it up, or, how can this be true? But it is true.
As far as V2K, what is V2K?
Now, I don't know what V2K is. I know the gang stalking, and some people say that the gang stalking involves members of the alphabet agencies, those who work in the shadows, along with reptilian alien entities as well. So again, I'm firmly convinced that the devil, Hasatan, Satan, Belial, Lucifer, whatever you want to call him, for whatever reasons, he's been given this short time to be in control of the world. And this is why our world is so crazy right now and upside down and backwards, especially in America. And as part of that, I believe that the devil is giving orders to these reptilian entities that are part of the satanic kingdom, and they are giving orders to the power elite on this earth, and that's why things are so crazy. Just think Roddy Piper, They Live. That's what we're living in right now.
Apparently, V2K is where there's a voice to skull
Oh, yes.
transmission.
Yes. Okay. Yes, I am familiar with that. And that's very real. That technology is very real, Devin. I've never experienced that. And I bind and rebuke it. I don't ever want to experience that. But it is entirely possible. And I've read stories about people, not only in America, but in other places that have experienced that, including soldiers over in Iraq. So when the first invasion of Iraq took place, there was allegedly a voice to skull type of technology being used to tell those soldiers to surrender. And they thought that it was the voice of God telling them to surrender.
Very interesting. We definitely hear about that type of stuff with extraterrestrials that
Yeah,
communicate to human beings where they get the messages through their brain with no actual words being exchanged.
I've had those experiences personally, so I know it's real. I've had many encounters with non human looking beings. Um, on one occasion, I was taken somewhere else. That's the best way that I can describe it. To make a long story short, it happened, I think, in 1997. My wife and I had gone to bed. Um, I heard a loud pop in the room, a very loud popping noise, and it was very unusual in the sense that both my wife and I are very light sleepers. So we wouldn't sleep through something like that. But yet she was still sound asleep. And we also had a little Yorkie um, that she was in her bed, which was on my wife's side of the bed down at the floor. And that little dog, you would never be able to sneak up, that little dog, any little noise, she would be up and barking. And yet on this occasion, neither my wife or the dog woke up. They were asleep. I thought, wow, that's unusual right off the bat. I jumped out of bed, went, investigated, didn't see or find anything out of place. I come back to bed, and now I'm wide awake. I'm like hyper aware that, and I guess because of my exposure to these things for most of my life, I do have this hyper awareness, and I know when something is there, something unseen is there. And I tried to go back to sleep. I would close my eyes, and it seemed like 5 seconds later, I'd open them back up again. This went on. And I remember looking down at the foot of the bed. We had a TV. It was on a TV stand and had a VCR then. It was 1997. We had a VCR, and the clock on the VCR said 40, read 401. And I remember seeing that. I closed my eyes again and opened them back up, and there stood at the foot of the bed this being at least 7 feet tall, glowing like a greenish, yellowish color, glowing, long, skinny arms, long, skinny fingers. And now I'm trying to wake my wife up. She will not wake up. The dog is not waking up and alerting. The next thing I recall is this being wrapping its left hand around my right ankle. And Devin, I've talked about this, God knows how many times since since I started giving interviews. I started in 1996, but when this happened in 97, I've been talking about it ever since. I'll never forget the coldness of that hand wrapping around my ankle, the fingers wrapping around my ankle, and then I felt paralyzed. And then this thing turned me over on my left side, and then all of a sudden I'm somewhere else. And it's like I came to or something, and I'm sitting on this seat, almost sort of like think about the back seat of a car. And to my left is this human looking guy, black hair, black suit, chalky white skin, clean shaven. And he sits there, he's very rigid. And he turns his head, didn't turn his body, he turned his head to the right and looked at me and said, "Don't talk about this." And that was the end of it. When I woke up the next morning, I felt like I'd been through, and at that time, I was a power lifter. I was a very powerful individual. I worked out with very heavy weights all the time. And I felt like I had, when I woke up, I felt like I had the just most intense workout. My wrist ached, my shoulders and elbows were everything. It just felt horrible. And so I will never, ever forget that as long as I live. And what was it about? I have no idea. And then another occasion, I think it was 2001. This was in November of 2001, I believe. I was going out. It was probably 7:45 p.m. somewhere in that area. I was going to pick my wife up from work, and I came out of the back door of the house and went around. I would have to go on the sidewalk, walk and turn right to head to the side gate there to go out to head to the front to where I was parked. And it's dark, and I'm coming out, and I make that right, I'm headed towards the gate. I see this cat. There was a cat that was like hiding. There was a bush to my left, and the cat was under that bush. And so I guess I startled the cat when I came around the corner, and he darted, and he got about, darted away from me. And he got about like 20 feet away from me and then stopped dead in its tracks. Now just have this visualization for a second. The cat darted away because I startled it, and then 20 feet from me stops dead in its tracks, and now it's looking up. It's looking up at something that I can't see. The cat's seeing it, but I can't see it. Then all of a sudden, Devin, it looked very similar to the being that was in my room there in 97, at least 7 feet tall, glowing like this greenish, yellowish color, same thing, long arms, long fingers, big black eyes, everything. It materialized, and I saw it for several seconds. The cat is frozen, just looking up at this thing. Now I can see it. And then all of a sudden, it just faded right out, just like that. And when it did, the cat took off. And the worst part about that experience was, and I paused for a few minutes, but I had to walk through that very spot to get to my car to go pick my wife up. Can you imagine?
Yeah, that's quite a story. And as far as you saying you had to live through some of this negative stuff to
Yeah.
be able to be a better minister to, I know there's some gurus out there that have never had dark periods, and they do a lot of preaching, so it is hard to kind of feel a connection with them. But where did you go dark? Because you were a kid during the time in the house. I know you were a bouncer for a period of time, and you're talking about being into bodybuilding. What was the dark period in your life before you got into religion?
Yeah, it was so dark, Devin. So again, my life started out that way. Um, and so being victimized like that put me in the fear-based, trauma-based way of thinking and living. So I anticipated things going wrong. That was from childhood, into my teen years. Where it all started going really dark for me was after the death of my mother. And she died 2 months and 2 days after my grandmother. So her mom, Dora Harvey, died from a sudden series of heart attacks at age 64. And then my mother, Patricia Bean, died from cerebral hemorrhage at age 44. These were the two closest people to me in my life, and they were suddenly gone. And I had no desire to live after that, to be honest with you. And I quit school in the eighth grade. I lied about my age. I went to work for a construction company. Now, I was a skinny kid back then, but I was working with some real tough, hardcore guys, and that made me a tough, hardcore guy, and it made me very strong as well. You know, humping 90-pound buckets of drywall mud, 5/8 sheets of sheetrock, carrying that made me very strong. Having to put shingles on my shoulders, going up a ladder, and putting the shingles on the roof and all that kind of stuff. It really, even though it was grueling, it was good for me physically because it made me a very strong man. But unfortunately, in working with some of those type of hardcore individuals, made me a hardcore individual. I was using drugs. I drank. I grew up on the streets. Now, I had some good friends, but I also had some friends that were arch criminals. And most of those people are dead or in prison. I could have been there myself, believe me. Um, and so I grew up on the streets, and I developed like an outlaw mentality. And I just didn't care, to be honest with you, Devin. I was living my life on the edge because I was seeking death. I was truly seeking death. I didn't want to live anymore. And I suffered with such terrible depression at times that I can recall days to where I would wake up, go use the bathroom, and come back and sit in a dark room in silence until it was time to go back to bed. That's how bad it was at times. And through it all, I didn't realize this until I got on the other side of it. Through it all, God was with me, and he was protecting me because I've had many life-threatening situations throughout the course of my lifetime. I've disarmed gunmen. I've had pistols pulled on me several times. I've disarmed a guy that was trying to slash my face, and then we went down to the floor, and all these people piled on top of us, and he was then trying to stab me in my leg. I guess he was trying to puncture my femoral artery. You name it. I've had people hit me with bottles. I've had people bite me. You just name it. I've experienced it, when it comes to physical combat as well. And being in that world, I worked in that world for 22 plus years, maybe even 23, because I did go back and train a security staff someplace else before I finally was done with it. But I could write a book just on those experiences alone, and God kept me safe and certainly kept me from death in some situations that, I absolutely could have been dead or shot or stabbed or whatever it may have been, but he always kept me safe. And just like with the spiritual warfare aspect, I find it amazing how the transformation took place. I was a physical warrior, now I'm a spiritual warrior. And it's the same thing. He's kept me safe because I've had some life-threatening experiences as this spiritual warrior, deliverance minister as well. And I praise God for keeping me safe through it all. So I lived in such darkness and despair. Devin, to be honest with you, I could have been a hitman. I was so dark and empty. And I studied a variety of martial arts, and I boxed and I wrestled and all these things. And I was a dangerous individual, and I knew how to hurt people. And I used to think of ways how I was going to hurt people, to be honest with you. And it all changed when I had an epiphany one day, that I decided that I wanted to really let all this go and make God first in my life. And I said to him, if you'll help me, I'll trust in you. And I don't want this for my life anymore. I don't want to think this way. I don't want to live this way. I don't want to be this way. I don't want to drink. I don't want to use drugs. When I drank, especially, I became a very violent individual. And again, it makes sense to me because, like I said to you in the beginning, there are spirits attached to alcohol. So look, there's nothing wrong with a person that wants to sit down and have a couple of drinks of wine or beer or whatever. If you're having a dinner or what goes wrong is when it's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, a dozen. Now you're under the influence. Now you're out of control of yourself, and those demonic forces can come in and take control. And that was very much what would happen to me, when I would become under the influence of alcohol, especially. And so I praise God that, and I was really sincere, Devin, when I'd had enough of this. I've been seeking death for so long and living my life on the edge. I've lived the life of one of those action heroes that you see in the film. I've lived a life like that. But when I finally realized that, there was something better and there was a better way for me, it was the greatest decision I ever made in my life, to be real and authentic with God and to ask him to please help me and to please take the desire to drink and to use drugs from me, which he did. I never went to one AANA. He just took it. I no longer had the urge or desire for it. Now I see it as my mortal enemy because I know what it is and I know what it does to people. And so that was the beginning of trading the fear-based, trauma-based way of thinking and living in for what I call warrior mode, which is faith, strength, and courage. And it was not an easy transition, Devin, not at all. It was 2 steps forward and 3 steps backward. Why? Because I had created negative behavioral patterns in my life. And so I had that outlaw mentality, doing things wrong. That was my way of doing things right. I loved being the heel, the outlaw. And so I had to trade all of that. And it was a process to break all of those destructive behavioral patterns. And once I got there, man, it was like somebody took the shackles and chains off of me. And it was like I was let out of prison. And it hasn't been a perfect, nobody has a perfect life on this planet. So I would be a liar if I said to you, oh, well, I have a perfect life. But I'll tell you one thing, I've got a life. So at one time I had a life that was so cursed that I was seeking death. Now I have a life that is so blessed that I wouldn't trade my life for anybody's life on this planet. So I can never thank God and praise him enough for saving me and for transforming my life from victim to victor. So that's part of the title of this new book, My Life, Transformation from Victim to Victor. And it is true. And I talk about these things, and I can never thank God and praise him enough for what he has done, for what he is doing, and for what he's going to do. And I'll tell you, you touched on it a little bit about some of these phony charlatans out there, and they know who they are. And more importantly, God knows who they are. And it really irks me when I hear some of these people and how they tell people, oh, you just get your money in here to the ministry and we're going to pray for you. And if you buy my book, you're going to become rich and all. And people fall for this. That's the sad part about it. People fall for this. And so when it doesn't happen, so when the person, invests their money, and another tactic they use in some of these churches is if you double up your tithes, you're going to get a 4-fold return for your investment. What? I don't think God deals in cash, but yet somehow these people are manipulative enough. They're master deceivers, and they can get the people to go along with what they are, sending out there. And the people fall for it. And when it doesn't happen, then they'll come back to that person. And so the pastor, preacher, whatever they are, they'll say, oh, well, you just didn't have enough faith. That's why it didn't. So now you're dismissed. So what happens there, Devin, is people lose their faith over something like that. So this is why I always say to people, and I have my little show every Friday night called Warrior Mode, and I talk about this constantly. Trust no man. Pray first, place your trust in God, and let him guide you. And always, if somebody's presenting something to you, and I say to the people, you don't have to believe a word I'm saying. Ask God if what I'm saying is true. Take it to him. Trust in him and allow him to guide you. Otherwise, you're going to be swallowed up by the world and the charlatans that are pretending to be men of God, and they're doing what they're doing. And they really believe that they're going to be unscathed, that they could continue to do these things and nothing's ever going to happen to them. Well, I beg to differ. because look, we're all going to stand accountable for the things that we have done in life. I could write a lengthy book on mistakes that I've made in life, and I'd be the first one to say it. Um, but when you present yourself as being squeaky clean and perfect, and you can be perfect too, you just send in your 1995 or get on that phone, even if you've only got $5 left, you send that $5 over and you're going to be perfect too. And this is absolutely fraud. It is deception in the highest and lowest order. And there is going to be a recompense and a punishment for it. I'm ready to stand, and I'll stand for the things that I've done in life. But I wouldn't want to trade places with some of these people that have been in this level of deception to people that are just seeking a better way for them in their lifetime.
That makes me have to ask you. I mean, I don't think he's been found guilty or gone to trial yet, but Ted DiBiase and his sons and his Heart of David Ministries, are you familiar with that big scandal?
I'm familiar with it. I don't know Ted DiBiase. I've never met him, but we have a connection though, and I'm trying to think of his last name. William, who was the publicist for Ted DiBiase at the time, somehow our paths crossed, and he was going to do some publicist work for me as well. I can't. He was a very nice guy. I can't remember his last name, but he was Ted DiBiase's publicist, and so it never turned out that William and I worked together. But he was a really good guy. But no, I have not personally met Ted DiBiase or his sons. Um, I have read the stories, and boy, oh boy, that doesn't sound good. And I'm not saying he's guilty. I don't know. I wasn't there, but based on what I've read, that doesn't sound good. That's for sure. And if something like that is true, then how in the world? Now think about this, Devin. And this happens all the time. And this is why I tell people, don't put your trust in men like that. So if I say to you right now, Devin, I'm going to make a prophecy right now, and I'm going to tell you what's going to happen in 2024. I'm going to tell you when the world's going to end and all these things. And you say, wow, okay, I believe what he's saying. I'll trust him. And then when none of these things happen, where do you go from there? Do you continue to believe me or trust me? How could you? And that goes the same for anybody out there that, and again, I'm not accusing Ted DiBiase. I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't know what he's done or what he hasn't done. I've read. And if that's true, then how could anybody possibly trust and put their trust in him or anybody else like that ever again? How could you?
The other thing is Hulk Hogan. I thought he already was baptized, but he recently got rebaptized again. I guess after all of his controversies, he may have felt the need to purify himself. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I hope for his sake that it's real and authentic, and maybe something was touching his spirit that he was going wrong and had made some mistakes and done some things that he felt that he needed to be cleansed from. And, in a lot of my spiritual deliverances, I always suggest to the person that they allow me to baptize them because baptism is the final piece of the puzzle. It is the to where you can stand before God, blessed, sealed, sanctified, purified, cleansed, and made holy before Him. So baptism, in my opinion, is necessary. It's the exclamation point on having the deliverance and being free from the evil that can come onto a person. And so good for him. I mean, if he's real and authentic, and if that is something that he felt God put on his spirit, then good for him. May move forward in peace.
There's a fan on here that said, "Who did you ever beat?" Well, you were a bouncer in Baltimore, and for those unfamiliar with Baltimore, it's a pretty rough town. So I imagine if you were a bouncer there for any period of time, you'd have to have some type of fighting ability.
Oh, I've been involved in probably well over 200 fights in my lifetime. I got scars to prove it, believe me. and I never ever intentionally set out to hurt anybody. It was always being in control of the situation, but I have been involved in riots. I recall a time I had one bouncer working with me, and we were in the middle of over 30 people fighting. I'll never ever forget it. It was one of the bloodiest scenes. I had to go after it was over with, and I wasn't seriously injured, but he and I were back to back trying to control all these people and throwing people around and having to defend ourselves. And when it was all over with, um, I was put into an ambulance for them to wash the blood off me. It wasn't my blood, it was the blood of others. I had to be cleaned of that. And that wasn't the only time that happened, but I never ever intentionally set out to hurt anybody. It was always trying to control the situation. But boy, oh boy, have I ever been in situations again to where, I could have been seriously injured or killed. And so I could write a book just on those 22 plus years in that business, in that environment. And you're right, Devin. Baltimore is one of the toughest towns, and I've been to every town in this, every major city in America, and I could tell you with absolute certainty that Baltimore is one of the toughest places, and with some of the best fighters that I've ever come across in my lifetime. And I worked in one bar in Southwest Baltimore, and this place was so bad that when the fights would happen, and I had, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 or 7 guys. I always was the head of security wherever I was. And so I would a lot of times take people with me that had worked for me before um, into the establishment. And that particular establishment, the fights would spill out into the street. And this was an area called Washington Boulevard. And so the Baltimore Ravens and the Baltimore Orioles, their stadiums are right down the street from where this area is. And the fights would get so big because people would come out of their houses and they would join in the fight. So it would stop traffic up on both sides of Washington Boulevard. Now you have 20, 30 people out there brawling in the middle of Washington Boulevard. I have assisted police many times at that bar and other facilities in capturing criminals, fighting with the police against some of these criminals. Just absolutely astounding when I think about some of these experiences. So I had a lot of friends that were Baltimore City police officers. It's Maryland State police officers, you name it. Those guys would be off duty and they would come to see me, in these establishments. That's the level of respect and rapport that I had with these individuals. Just absolutely amazing.
I could only imagine. We never had the gun incidents here in Canada, but I dealt with a lot in my 18 years of bouncing, and thank God I have YouTube now, so I don't have to do that anymore because it is not fun.
No, and I would imagine it'd be worse now because back then, it would be a fight. Now these people, they don't, by and large, in most cases, they don't have the heart to fight. They don't have the skills to fight either. So they'll pull a gun out and that's it. That's usually how that ends now. And it's very sad and unfortunate. The whole thing's sad and unfortunate, but now you have to be very, very careful because even if it's like a road rage incident or whatever, that person's not going to fight. They're just going to pull a gun out. That's it.
And the other thing, this happened in my last few years as a bouncer. Now people don't see what goes on inside, and if there's a lineup outside the bar and you're taking them outside and having to use force, they don't know what the hell that person did to you inside, and they're just getting the footage
Yeah.
of what happens outside. So it's actually way more dangerous of false
Yes.
accusations these days.
So the role of being, a security person, bar bouncer, is nearly impossible, and that goes for law enforcement as well. So it's so easy for somebody now to make accusation or take a phone and say, oh, it's this, it's that. So you can't effectively do your job, as either law enforcement or security personnel. It's virtually impossible to do so. So for no amount of money would I go back into that business ever again. I'm just thankful that I was able to survive it and be able to sustain it for as long as I did. I mean, I worked at a place in Baltimore called Hammerjacks, and that's where Ravens Stadium is now. We had 40 guys on that staff, Devin. 40. That place was huge. It would get as many as 5,000 people in the venue, and you would be guaranteed that there was going to be, some terrible fight. And if the things that took place back then were captured on cameras of today, that place would have been shut down, instantaneously after some of the things that took place there. Sheesh, it was.
Yes, well, I guess we're both lucky to have survived. I definitely had some close calls.
Yeah.
Robert Brown from Lafayette, Indiana, wants to know your thoughts on Sonny's recent sentencing.
Well, there's another example right there. Um, this is a person, I don't know her, never met her, but, again, you read the stories. And apparently, this individual was not going to learn from her prior arrest and experiences, and is the destructive spirit of alcohol that has worked through her now to have ended someone's life and virtually destroyed her life as well. So I pray for her that while she's away, she can have an epiphany like I did and realize that these demonic forces are literally working through her to create destruction. Otherwise, it's over for her. And I certainly, with having this time on her hands, I pray that she will have such an epiphany.
She's definitely having people send her money for food because I've never seen someone gain so much weight in prison.
Amazing. And maybe she's also, and again, it's speculation. I don't know her. I don't know what she does, but I wonder if she's taking like some kind of antidepressants or something, because some of those types of things can blow a person up as well. So I don't know. But it's, again, that's another case, Devin, to where you see that a person has been used by the devil to create such levels of destruction, but yet there are still people who will aid and sort of, I guess, just be a servant in some way. And it's good to help people. There's nothing wrong with that at all, but you can't be someone's fool either.
Now, 2023 was a terrible year for losses in the pro wrestling industry. I know you're a wrestling fan. We
Yeah.
lost Iron Sheik, Billy Graham, Terry Funk, so many legends. Any thoughts on all the passings we had in 2023? Even
Very,
Bray Wyatt.
yeah, very, very sad. And, I often find myself now, my operation's almost like a 24/7 operation. People contact me for help from all over the world. I could be on a Skype session with somebody at 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning from India or Australia or New Zealand, wherever it may be. But yet, when I have moments of downtime, I always go back and look at some of the old. I don't watch the current wrestling. I haven't watched it in years, but I always go back and watch the matches with Bruno, Bob Backlund, superstar Billy Graham, the Sheik, all these people, Andre the Giant, Bobo Brazil. That was another guy that I liked a lot. And Haku, Bruno's my favorite, but Haku would be the second favorite. And so I go back and watch these things from time to time. It's just amazing, incredible. And the stark contrast. Now, isn't it amazing? Think about this. Back then, you had those guys. They were, by and large, in many cases, legit strong men and tough guys. Today's brand, not so much, and not for everybody, but I mean, by and large, you see the smaller guys now. It just seemed to me, now I could be wrong, but it seemed to me like it came off. It was more real with those types of guys, back then, as opposed to and to each his own. If people love that what they do today, but it seems to me like it's just more like acrobats or actors or, a lot of pretty boys. It just, I don't know, it just seems different to me. Something is way off from what it used to be. But you see these stories talking about the numbers generated, the dollars that are generated, which seem to be far more now than ever before. And I just can't wrap my head around that.
I think there's just more ways to make money and international distribution deals and more rights fees, whereas before they were making money more off the houses and less from the TV shows. Now all the money is in content. But yeah, it seemed like the characters were more characters before. And yes, the wrestlers of today are gonna live longer, but the people that would have been wrestlers today that are more crazy just probably won't have jobs. Because I don't
Yeah.
think Piper or Flair would make it these days.
Oh, just, when you think back and you look at some of those things and think about this too, Devin, and I can remember going to some of those matches in Baltimore, and it was, there was a buzz about that. It was a real event. People were looking forward to going. People would go. People would become emotionally invested. That place would be rocking. Everybody would be into it, especially if it was Bruno. And even Bob Backlund. Bob Backlund gets a bad rap, and a lot of people say, oh, he didn't draw a dime. I disagree. I was personally there in Baltimore seeing the people popping for Bob Backlund. Bob Backlund, in my opinion, based on what I saw, was one of the most skilled wrestlers ever. And he just doesn't seem to get the credit, and was a strong guy as well. Deceptively strong for his size, which I think is 230 pounds, 235 pounds. Very, very strong guy. And I've heard people like Stan Hansen say you wouldn't want to get into a shoot with him because he knew how to take care of himself. He was legit, and nobody was going to try and double cross him in the ring because you just weren't going to go there with him.
Very true. And before we get going here, I just want to show you the clip of Ted DiBiase's son, who used to be in WWE, leaving the courthouse
Okay.
and giving out blessings. So let's take a look. I just want to
Wow.
know your thoughts on this.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
You got anything to say, Tad?
No, he doesn't. Hey, Jesus loves you, brother. God bless you, man.
Is that all you got to say, Tad?
That's it, buddy.
You're accused of stealing millions of dollars from poor people in Mississippi.
It's all good.
Sure you don't want to say anything, Tad?
So what do you think about him throwing out Jesus's name and all of that?
I'll say this. If I were in that position and somebody accused me of stealing millions of dollars and I didn't do it, I'd want every microphone, I'd want 50 microphones in front of me so I could say, I did not do this. I'm wrongly accused of this. The truth will come out. But I'm telling you all, and I'm telling the world now, I did not do this. So it's not, to me, again, look, I don't know him, and people deal with things in their own way, but that wouldn't be my approach on it.
It seems like he's walking out of there almost like a heel, like, saying Jesus loves you almost as a heel. Like, I'm not going to answer you. I'm just going to say this kind of sarcastically at you and walk
But a
right
lot
by
of them
you.
do it, Devin. A lot of them do it that are, and again, I don't know him. I don't know Ted DiBiase. I don't know his sons. I don't know their hearts. But I can tell you this. Whenever these pastors or preachers, get themselves into some type of controversy like that, it always seems to be that same type of dialogue. Joel Osteen, the time a few years ago when the terrible floods hit Houston and he wouldn't open his church doors for the people. And that until the media was contacted, then all of a sudden Joel opened the doors up for everybody. But it's a similar thing. Oh, God loves you. Jesus loves you. And I don't know. To me, I could be wrong. Who am I? But it's like a work to me. I mean, I've seen this in many other cases with some of these pastors and preachers that were involved in some type of thing. Another thing, Eddie Long, he was a pastor in Atlanta, mega church, 22,000 people coming to his church every Sunday, and good old Eddie was out there marching against homosexuality, and he was one of the big upstanding guys in the community on that, and he was leading all the marches. And then come to find out, Eddie was molesting the boys in the church, and they paid out millions and millions of dollars to silence these victims, and that some victims did come forward. And what happened to good old Eddie? They sent TD Jakes, who's got his own controversies right now. You should look that up. They sent TD Jakes and a bunch of these people to come into Eddie Long's church. They performed a ceremony and put a crown on this man's head and put a cape on him and lifted him up, and the people ate it up. It was just like a work right from, King of the Ring or whatever. The congregation of 22,000 ate it up, and Eddie's innocent. They were calling him daddy, and he's the greatest thing. And this is the difference now. And this is what I tell people all the time. You want a real and authentic relationship with God. Never place your worship onto a man. I've had people send me messages, Devin, you're my hero. I worship you. No. I said, no, 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 no. Do not worship me. We are worshiping one, and that is the creator of the universe. And that was the message from Jesus, is to worship. He said, this is how you should pray. Our Father who art in heaven. He's the creator of everything. That's who our praise and worship goes to, not to a man. And so I caution people on things like this all the time, because you can get caught up very easily in placing your trust into someone like that. Now, you're really not trusting God. You're trusting this person that you think is an extension of God. And that's how cults begin. And it's a cult-like mentality. And no matter what that person does, the people are so emotionally invested, they're going to be all in no matter what. And it was an unfortunate ending for Eddie Long, because he died of a horrific cancer. So that was his ending. But he got away, by and large, with all the sexual assaults against those young men in the church. And the church paid out millions in damages to those young men and the families.
Speaking of kind of sect leader types, what do you think of Dr. Stephen Greer from the UFO world that asks for all this money to take people out into the desert for these meditations where they supposedly summon UFOs?
I've never met him, but again, I have a connection with him because he's in my area. And he sent representatives to me years ago. This was probably 1999. And I was speaking somewhere, and these people approached me, said that they came on behalf of Dr. Stephen Greer. And they were asking me all these questions because I was having a lot of UFO sightings and experiences back in that time. And I found that very interesting. And I also have a connection with Robert Bigelow, who was part of the NIDS, National Discovery of Science, which is related to the Skinwalker Ranch. Bigelow owned the Skinwalker Ranch back then. So how can I say this, Devin? I'm trying to be kind. Never met the man. Don't know him. But not a fan.
He seemed to be more legitimate in the past, and maybe in the last 5 to 10 years, he became more on the profitable side of things. But yeah, we'll take your answer on that. Robert Bigelow also owns Bigelow Aerospace, that
Correct.
supposedly had numerous contracts through the U.S. Government related
CIA,
to
yes.
yeah, related to obtaining this exotic material to be studied.
And as for Skinwalker Ranch, my opinion on that, now I've never been there, but my opinion on that is that they know exactly what's going on out there, and Bigelow had it and was monitoring that. And I think this is part of a CIA operation as well. And in my opinion, Devin, they know exactly what's going on out there.
What do you think is going on out there? A lot of people say it could be like a portal area where there's some sort of dimension crossover in that area because there's so much activity of all different types, UFOs, unusual beasts,
Yeah.
poltergeist activity, and as well as Bigfoot type
Yeah.
activity.
And I believe it all. But I've come to know, or I've come to believe through experience, that there are many facilities around America and the world, but just speaking of America, facilities such as Fort Meade, NSA here in Maryland, Skinwalker Ranch, Dulce, New Mexico, they're all over the place. And they're all connected. And I believe that it is a joint venture between non-human beings and human military industrial complex people that are working together. Now, why are they working together? What are they working together for? I have no idea. But I absolutely believe that's true. And it's been going on for a while. You and I could have a lengthy series of shows on this topic because places like Dulce and many other under Denver Airport, there's plenty of places where the levels go so far down, and just some of the information I wouldn't even want to share publicly that I've come across. And I believe it because there's been people that have been taken to facilities such as that and witnessed horrific things. So the bigger picture of this whole thing, I guess the best way that maybe I could summarize this is I believe that the devil has this short time on the earth to create havoc, which he is doing. And he is working through some of these reptilian beings that are part of the satanic kingdom, in my opinion. And they are giving the directives to the power elite on this earth. And this is why everything is so chaotic. So perhaps they have these deep underground bases to carry out these plans of destruction against mankind. I find it interesting as well when we think about things like homelessness and the food crisis and all this stuff. Oh, there's a shortage of everything. I don't believe that for 1 second. I believe all these problems could be solved instantaneously if there was a real plan of action put in to solve it. But they don't want to solve it. They want to keep things in chaos because if you keep the populace on low frequency, low vibration, they're wide open and vulnerable for demonic attack. And they want these people to suffer, and they want these people to stay. And then furthermore, there's going to come a time to where they want a great culling on the earth, to where they want a lot of people eliminated from planet Earth because it's easier to control a less number than what we have currently on the earth.
And they've donated a lot of money to the Ukraine, billions, I believe. I mean, all this money in war efforts. Not to say that that situation isn't unfortunate, but there's a lot of problems in the U.S. that could be solved with all this money going to help these other countries
It's all a
in
game, Devin.
wars.
It's all a game. So, okay, so if I have a brick and mortar church, which I do not, and I don't want one because I would be under a 501c3. And if I'm under a 501c3, then I'm under government control and they could tell me what I could say, what I can't say. And if I get out of line, they'll revoke my 501c3. So by and large, most of today's churches in America, I'm sorry to say, are corporate entities, and they are under control of the government through that 501c3. So there's no way that I want that. But if I were in such a brick and mortar building, and if I said to the people, and this is a tactic, this is another little work that they do in a lot of these places. Hey, we want you to donate extra money because we're going to send those monies over to the starving people in Africa. Okay, on the surface, wonderful. I love people. I want to help anybody. I would do anything for anybody. But again, I'm nobody's fool either. So I would say, all right, well, I want you to show me exactly where those monies are going, how they're getting there, how are they getting dispersed to the people. I'd want to see it all before I gave a dime. That's not happening. You're just blindly giving. And then these people now, have a lot of money in their hands to do whatever they want to do. If it were me, I would say to the people, okay, I'd like for you to consider giving some more to the church, because here's what we're going to do. We are going to start in our neighborhood right here in our area, and we're going to take these monies and help the homeless with these monies right here in our area. See, there's the difference. If you start in our area, now the money becomes more transparent because we're right there. We're in our area. But if you say to the people, we're going to send it over to Africa, they can't track that money or trace anything. So now, you've got their money and you can do whatever you want with it. And I'm sorry to say these things, but it's true. It happens all the time. So there's the difference between, I guess, as you would say in your business, work or shoot.
For sure, there's definitely Billy Graham learned how to work from being a minister, but he was also very legitimate in his love of God, and his wife stayed by his side through her being so religious, despite both of them going through so much over the years. But before we go here, Robert Brown asking if you have a YouTube channel. Where can the fans follow you?
And this is sad, Devin. Is it the Spiritual Warrior? I don't even know my own YouTube channel. Is it the Spiritual Warrior? Let me see if I can find it real quick, so I'm telling the truth about where to send everybody. Yeah, it's just youtube.com user Bill Bean 104. So if you punch up Bill Bean on YouTube, you'll be able to go there and you'll see a bunch of my Warrior Mode shows and whatever I could do to be of a help and a blessing to those of you that are watching. I certainly will do everything that I can by the power of God working through me. So no matter what you think of me or what I've said here, I hope that you'll say, at least this guy, he's really telling the truth or talking, what he's saying. He believes what he's saying, because it's all about being real and authentic. I've had many offers, Devin, as you know, to start TV series. I've had offers about movies being made on my life, and I've turned them down. And I've turned them down for a reason, because if I can't be real and authentic and be myself, I'm not interested. For no amount of money, I'm not interested. I can't do it. I can't fake it. And so I've had people say to me that were representing me as agents, you're your own worst enemy. Well, I'm sorry. If I can't be me and I can't be real, then I'm not interested. I just can't do it.
Well, you definitely believe what you preach, no matter if people agree with you or not. Someone says you're always a great guest. I agree. That's why we've had you back. Probably this might be your fifth appearance or so now. So
Yeah, and I
we
appreciate it,
appreciate
brother.
it. Thank you for getting us to a good start to hopefully a great 2024. I was blessed to survive the last year, and this year is going to be a great one. So we'll let you close this off with whatever you want to tell the fans.
Well, thank you, Devin. I appreciate it. You're a good friend, and I certainly appreciate you, and thank you for always having me on. It's always a pleasure to be on with you. And for all of your viewers out there, thank you so much for tuning in and for watching. And, if you're out there and you're in need of spiritual deliverance or spiritual advice or whatever it may be, if you went through a rough time, you could visit that YouTube channel, or you could visit BillJBean.com. and email. You can message me from there, and then I will contact you back. I'm extremely busy with many cases and many clients around the world. However, God always seems to have a way of helping me to manage my time to where I try to get back to everybody as quickly as I can. So I can't promise you that if you send me a message, I'll instantly reply, but I will get back to you as quickly as I can. And I'll do anything and everything that I can by the power of God working through me to help you. So if you want to get a copy of the new book, My Life, Transformation from Victim to Victor, go to my site, BillJBean.com, and there's a button there, order your copy now or whatever it is, get your copy here, and it'll take you to Amazon, and you can order your copy from Amazon. I do have a shipment of books coming in, which should be on the 7th of January. And for those of you that would like to order a signed copy, I'll have a button on my site to where you can order from there. I'll personally sign it and personally send it out to you. So again, I wish all of you out there a very happy 2024. May God bless all of you with an abundance of love, peace, joy, good health, and prosperity. And I certainly wish that for you, Devin, and for your family as well.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, and click the subscribe button to not miss any of our latest shoot interviews, match videos, or news updates.